Good morning and welcome. My name is Ethan Chazen. I am the founder of the Chazen Group, and I provide small to mid-sized organizations with growth coaching focused on developing an amazing workforce and building a great place to work culture. Today, I want to talk about a business that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and that is venerable American US culture icon Disney. And so there's some things that happen in the news with ABC canceling Jimmy Kimmel's show and then bending to backlash by reinstating him. But I want to focus on Disney today. So let's dive right into today's coverage. And let's go back to something that I think is kind of interesting. BVNW News in January of last year, they had an article written called The Downfall of Disney. And the author raises some interesting points. So throughout recent years, the magical realm of Disney appears to be losing its charm. What was once a creative powerhouse for storytelling has declined to a repetitive cycle from being the so-called happiest place on earth. And that's what the tagline was. That's what the founder, Walt Disney, and subsequent leaders of the organization strive for decades to build, was this notion of the happiest place through its movies and theme parks and other strategic business units. So while Disney's evolution over time was a natural response to frequent shifts in the entertainment business and consumer preferences and lifestyle and values, the author notes that I cannot grasp the fact that Disney is losing the core qualities that made it a culture icon. And this is important as a lesson to take away for any business owner, any founder, leadership teams. When you lose the very soul of your enterprise, when you lose track of your ethical construct, your moral compass, it basically means your business is destined for failure. So the primary concern at Disney is a notable absence of originality. They make sequels and they remake movies that dilute the exclusive spark that defines Disney. In other words, the Disney essence. So we're going to talk about that very same theme. So check out this video from Ari Melber of MSNBC.
Americans are already pushing back. We've heard that business and money was part of the threat here. So some people using their money and wallets are immediately canceling their entire Disney subscriptions, which of course covers a lot more than just ABC, to say they don't want Bob Iger's Disney products if this is the censorship agenda, the anti-First Amendment cave that they sign on to, and then they're echoing that in their own platforms online.
Disney Plus, yeah, y'all could go ahead, hit the road, Jack.
That was your mistake, getting scared by the FCC.
Not Disney Plus, not a Disney cruise, not Disneyland, not Disney World.
I found out that there's a protest at Disney headquarters and I'm going.
Disney Plus and Hulu, cancel. Throw you in the bin.
We will not be there with Mickey and Minnie.
Remember, if these companies are just going with what they think the pressure is, money or government pressure, there are a lot of people who can provide their own pressure. That's true in sort of consumer culture. It's true in democracy. You still have your voice. You still have your money. You still have the ways you can express yourself. And remember, now is the time to do it. Although I'm not telling you what to do. Everyone can make up their own minds, of course. Now,
so this is important. I have done numerous videos on companies, corporations, bowing to pressure from Trump's second administration by doing away with diversity, equity, inclusion, by getting rid of woke initiatives, supposedly woke initiatives. This is the kind of stuff that is going on. There is a war. There is a war in corporate boardrooms right now on decisions being made, whether we give Trump what he wants, in this case, firing Jimmy Kimmel from ABC's network, because Jimmy Kimmel came out in one of his bits and said that the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk was actually in alignment with the MAGA camp. And the minute he said that, ABC kowtowed to pressure from Trump's administration by removing him from the air. And we're in the state of an American democracy that's shifting towards dictatorship. And American business and industry has a role to play or not play in this seismic movement to a destruction in our democracy. So Disney personifies an American institution, an American culture icon brand that is feeling the effects of decisions they make in the boardroom that are purely monetary. So here we go. This is interesting. Jester Bell. It's an interesting YouTube channel, so I suggest you subscribe to it. But let's see what Jester Bell has to say about this news.
Something absolutely hilarious happened. The Disney shills, the people who Disney had been courting for years, who they overthrew their original audience for, have called for a boycott against Disney. And it is really hilarious. But first, we need to set up the context of what is happening here. So ABC, owned by Disney, fired Jimmy Kimmel after spreading disinformation about the last week. And this decision comes from Bob Iger himself because they were about to be sued into oblivion. And honestly, you know, I'm not a super expert on like late night TV and all of that. From what I understand, he probably was going to get fired anyway because the ratings were not there. So they might just be looking for an excuse at this point. Basically, he's not worth the trouble. But anyway, Bob Iger himself made the decision, and the show has been pulled off air unless Jimmy Kimmel essentially posts an apology or retraction of what he said, and he's not doing that. So that's the situation. But we are not here to talk about Jimmy Kimmel. We are here to talk about the fallout from this decision. Once again, this is a decision that comes from ABC and Disney and the companies that own them, Nexstar and Sinclair. So this is coming from the company that owns this.
So that's enough of a context for introduction. Again, ABC owned by Disney. Disney acquired ABC. Disney over the last few decades has gone through a mass growth phase through acquisition. They acquire ABC. The Jimmy Kimmel Show is a brand in the ABC company. And ABC turns around. Now, this is obviously about Disney and Disney exerting pressure on ABC to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. And then ABC deciding that because of the monetary negative impact of losing Jimmy Kimmel, they decide to reinstate. So he's coming back. But again, it shows cowardice. It shows a lack of soul and ethics and morality on the part of Disney. And this story that I'm doing, this video, is based on Disney over the decades, and it's lost that Disney magic. So let's go to Quora. And I find that there's some interesting comments. Now, this is a thread that goes back a year, but there's some interesting nuggets to be gleaned from some of the comments that people are making. So let's talk initially about the theme of the thread, which is why do people feel so frustrated in Disney, meaning their move away from their traditional roots, their core values, and their ethical construct, right? So Damana Hughes, really interesting comment. It's a complicated answer why I've given up on Disney. It has to do with legacy. Disney's been around a long time. The entertainment released during each of the eras in which Disney operates reflected that particular moment in history, which is absolutely true. Disney adapts to and responds by delivering content, entertainment that at its core should reflect the changing consumer landscape and values of society. Some of it aged well, others not so much. Disney's done its best over the years to adjust its content to keep in step with the changing socio-political climate. And for a long time, it went well. Disney held on to what worked, got rid of what didn't, and it's kept on top for so long. But it has struggled mightily recently. So they bought Marvel and Fox and Lucasfilm, all of which used to make unique and cool content. But then Disney adds its own kind of friendly recipe. They throw a bland ingredient into the stew, so to speak. And this is Joe Roy's comment, making everything childish or Disney-esque. And that's my interpretation or paraphrasing. Old school Marvel comics and movies before the Marvel comic universe of Disney were completely different from each other. They took themselves somewhat seriously, and they weren't full of that awkward Disney Hannah Montana style of humor. So that's an interesting perspective. Interesting. So this is being written by somebody, and this is Dustin Johnson, who used to love going to Disney World when he was a kid, as did I. My family and I visited a few times, and it was magical when we were young, but it didn't age well. And this is coming from me as a father of a 26-year-old daughter and having taken her to Disney World and Disneyland. Nowadays, I can't stand the thought of being in a world where the money-hungry rodent rules, meaning Mickey Mouse, there you go. Any trip to a theme park is expensive, but Disney World, you have to be richer than cheesecake to spend a day there. I concur. I concur. It's ridiculous, the corporate greed that's reflected in Disney's newer business model over the last few decades. So I want to go to Wikipedia for a minute, because it's really interesting. The Walt Disney Company, it's one of the largest media corporations in the world. We know that. It's been the subject of a wide variety of criticism of its business practices, executive behavior, and the content that it's produced. In particular, Walt Disney Studios has been criticized for including a stereotypical portrayal of non-white characters, sexism, alleged plagiarism. Several of Disney's business ventures, which include the networks, the theme parks, and their product lines, have sparked controversy amongst groups of consumers and media outlets. This is not news to you. I'm sure you've come across stories around the Disney empire, its brand empire, but I'm trying to kind of give you the essence of why I believe this is a really valuable lesson for people who are just starting a business, people who are leading organizations through chaos and transformation, people who are dealing with maintaining an amazing organizational culture and a great brand. So let's go to Michael Eisner, one of their leaders. So back in '77, Roy Disney, son of Walt Disney and nephew of Walt Disney, he resigned as executive due to disagreements he had with his colleagues' philosophy or beliefs about the direction of the company. As Roy Disney claimed later on, and this is going back to 1977, so we're talking about nearly 50 years ago. 50 years ago, I just felt the creativity within the company was not going anywhere interesting. It was stifling. This is the son and nephew of the founders of the company. So he keeps a seat on the board of directors, but then he resigns in 1984. And that was the reason he resigned, because there was a corporate battle that was going on. And there were developments that led to the replacement of President and CEO Ronald Miller, who was married to Walt Disney's daughter, Diane Marie Disney. And then in comes Michael Eisner. In comes Michael Eisner, who was criticized for many reasons pertaining to his management style. And I'm going to show you in a minute a book called Disney War by James Stewart, which is a really interesting expose. It's a deep dive into the challenges at Disney's leadership under Eisner for 20 plus years. So James Stewart, in his book Disney War, points to some challenges that Disney faced during Eisner's leadership. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? It was the last movie I committed to seeing on my own before I became a father, and it was wildly successful commercially, but it had some really problematic undertones which reflected Disney's many challenges. So you have Robert Zemeckis, Richard Williams, who were producing this blockbuster. They wanted to make it bigger, bolder, and they were constantly fighting with the board. Eisner is known for being a difficult person, kind of like Steve Jobs. He had tension with Frank Wells before he passed. He had a friendship that turned to a rivalry with Jeffrey Katzenberg. He had tension with Michael Ovitz. Then Disney goes and purchases the ABC family of content and brands, and the fallout from Disney's inability to revive the ABC brand. Hilary Duff leaves Disney Channel because they weren't paying her commensurate to what her worth was. Pixar, venerable Pixar studio, decided it didn't want to have a relationship with Disney. Then all of a sudden, Comcast comes in and tries to do a hostile takeover. So all of these problems at Disney reflect an incredibly challenged ethical construct and a loss of morality. So I want to share with you very quickly Disney War with James Stewart. Just going to read to you. It's a book that serves as an expose of Michael Eisner's leadership there for 20 years. It chronicled the careers and interactions of the executives at Disney, from Ron Miller, Roy Disney, Frank Wells, Katzenberg, Ovitz, Joe Roth, Bob Iger, Stan Kinsey. These are powerful, powerful figures. And he does an expose, which is definitely worth reading if you want to do a deep dive. Okay? So, Roy Disney and Stanley Gold remove Ron Miller in 1984. And then that's the kind of the trigger amongst other things that were going on. I mentioned the struggles in getting Who Framed Roger Rabbit done. So there were some issues there. But at a deeper play here is when I do in my consulting practice, I talk to business owners about what's your legacy? What do you want to leave behind when you're done? Whether it's a startup that's newly formed or you've been in business for a few years or you're a legacy organization that's been around for a period of time. As I recently did in a video I dropped on how CEO Tavares of Stellantis is killing the Jeep brand. So Disney's morality, or how the idea that viewing a film that's produced by Disney is a kind of moral act. And so this is a really fascinating editorial put up on July 22nd, 2019 on the Modern Reviewer. So they talk about Comic-Con in 2019. Disney Marvel announced a bunch of new movies that were coming through phase 4 of the MCU, the Marvel Comic Universe. So things like Black Widow, Eternals, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and Thor: Love and Thunder. Okay? And 5 Disney Plus shows. Disney Plus is a streaming service. It's a brand within the Disney empire. Things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Loki, What If, and Hawkeye. Some of these movie shows seem a little interesting. Others I don't know enough about talking about. But here's the thing. The idea goes that by watching one of Disney's films featuring progressive ideas, such as having a diverse cast, you're taking a moral stance in support of an issue rather than just giving your money to a corporation that doesn't really care about these issues that you care about. Think about all the issues with making the latest iteration of Snow White, which I talk about with my students in the college classes I teach in marketing and PR. It's a really fascinating study in Disney's downfall. Okay? So it's an interesting conversation and kind of a funny one if you think about Disney's long history of immorality. So this is a company that has morality questions going back to its founding in the 1950s, which I'm not going to touch upon here, but you can kind of do some deep dive. And I put a link to all of the resources that I'm using for this video in the description below. But we talk about the consumption of movies and TV shows as a statement on our own core values. We as consumers of content, we make decisions about the kind of organizations we want to support through the content they produce, through the products they make, the services they offer. And this is especially true of millennials and Gen Zs nowadays. Fandom, our worship of these brands, has become so entangled with our own personal lives that any kind of criticism directed at a thing that we love makes us feel like we're being personally attacked. So if you love Disney, for example, you're going to be offended by this. If you have issues with Disney, you're going to embrace it. This is called confirmation bias. We take in the ideas or the beliefs that we hold true, and we ignore the ones that contradict them. Disney has played up with this idea by focusing so heavily in their PR campaigns about how these movies are giving voices to people who have never had voices in major motion pictures before. And it is accurate and fair of Disney on the one hand to do this. So if you think about Black Panther or Captain Marvel, it's absolutely important for people in these underrepresented communities to have the opportunity to see themselves. That's not being argued. And I'll put the link to this so you can read it. But there's consequences. There are marketplace financial consequences when you move away from your core ideology, your core belief, your core relationship with your customer base, those most loyal Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, who support your organization. When you move away, as I just said, from reflecting their values, giving them what they want as far as content, and you move away from that, there's going to be a price to be paid on your financial statements. So here we go. Disney's lost 30% of its audience due to the embrace of divisive identity politics, according to a survey. Audiences have enough of the toxic rat, or in this case, the mouse house. This from a reputable entertainment park source called That Park Place from January of this year, 2025. So in a damning new survey conducted by Rasmussen Reports, a reputable research survey organization that was given to That Park Place, Disney is facing a harsh reality. Its embrace of divisive identity politics and abandoning its traditional family values is driving audiences away. And let's talk about the financial impact of that. So the survey was conducted January 5th to January 7th of this year. It sampled 1,408 American adults and revealed an amazingly startling trend. Nearly a quarter of respondents, 23%, admitted to avoiding Disney movies in the past year because of their political ideology or leanings. An additional 9% were not sure. So when you combine those, the 23 and the 9% of actively avoiding and not sure if they're avoiding, 32%. So if you think about that, you say, okay, 32%. Well, if we're Disney, that means that 68% of respondents still are not avoiding our content. But if you think about that 32% aggregate number, when you scale it up, using, for example, its streaming audience, that's 157 million subscribers, to add supported platforms like Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. That's pretty staggering. If you take 32% of that 157 million subscribers, that's 51, no, let's say 52 million people who are not watching Disney films due to politics. Think about the financial losses. So if you say the average US movie ticket price is $10.70 last year, you multiply that out by the 51.8 million viewers, and you're left with $558 million in loss of annual movie ticket sales. That's over $500 million in lost revenue, which is a pretty big nut to swallow. That's a massive blow for an organization. And if you look at actual losses, they're higher. When you factor in the premium ticket pricing models for IMAX, Dolby, 4DX, and 3D screenings, which people typically see Disney movies, those movie option venues, technology offerings, come at a higher price point. Additionally, Disney's total revenue or total potential audience is actually likely to be larger because we assume that these are Disney fans. And if you look at demographics of the tribe that follows Disney, the Rasmussen survey gives us additional insight of audience demographics and a divide in Disney's appeal to markets. The survey sample consisted of 47% men, 53% women. That's a pretty even gender split. Politically, 34% of respondents identify as Democrat, 29% as Republican, 37% other, which includes independents and unaffiliated. Okay. But if you look at gender, the survey revealed that 28% of respondents avoided Disney due to politics were men, compared to 19% women. So this is what we call a self-inflicted wound by Disney. And so what I mean by that is fans are saying that Disney's moved away from its core values. And so here's Bob Iger. Disney has strayed so far from what Walt Disney wanted, the company is no longer sticking to Disney's core values. Those are criticisms that some fans bring up. But How does current CEO Bob Iger feel about the Disney's value, the values of Disney? I'm sorry. So Bob Iger comes back to Disney that's different from the one that he left formerly as CEO back when he was his first time around. Disney's now facing an incredible amount of criticism about its handling of parental rights in education in Florida, some of its latest films, theme park choices like Genie Plus and price increases, and how Bob Iger has spoken to the matter of company values and how he's approaching Disney's future in a leadership role. It's a criticism Disney often receives that they've moved away from their core values of the original founder, Walt Disney, and they're no longer following Walt's vision, whether it's the theme parks or the movies or the TV shows or any other content. So go back to 2021. Somebody writes an op-ed in the Orlando Sentinel about Disney's wokeness and how it's ruining the experience of Disney's theme parks and movies, from updating its uniform and tattoo policies to changing on the rides like the Jungle Cruise and Pirates of the Caribbean. In that op-ed in 2021, the individual wrote, "The more Disney moves away from the values and vision of Walt Disney, the founder, the less the Disney World means to me. Please return to the values and vision of Walt." Please let that sink in. Let's say you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, and I'm sitting with you and I ask, where do you want to go? Where do you want to take this business? What's your legacy? Or let's say you're currently on the leadership team, or you are the de facto leader of an organization that's gone through some changes, some chaos, transformation. You struggled with COVID. I'm asking you right now, face to face, where do you want the future of your organization to be? What are the values that you hold most dear, that you want people to equate with the legacy of your organization? So, no way about it. In Trump's economy, Disney is losing billions over the decision to censor Jimmy Kimmel. Disney's lost $1.5 billion in market cap and nearly $3 per share of its stock price since the move, at the urging or forcing of Trump's administration to indefinitely remove Jimmy Kimmel from the ABC late night slot. Disney Plus subscribers have been canceling in droves to a point where the cancellation page has been crashing for some users. This is why ABC had to reinstate him. He's coming back. What idiots. What morally lacking leadership. Even Disney Plus stars are joining in the movement. Actress Tatiana Maslany, star of She-Hulk, called for her more than 500,000 fans on Instagram to cancel your Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN subscriptions. In a reel that she posted, Misha Collins, who starred in Supernatural, who I love, by the way, posted on her ex Twitter page to more than 2.6 million followers that he would cancel his Disney Plus subscription indefinitely. It's pretty easy to cancel your Disney Plus subscription, and a coordinated national day of cancellations would send a very clear message about our values as Americans, wrote actor Will Wheaton. Kimmel, whose contract with ABC is up next year, 2026, is already talking to Disney and ABC execs about his future with the network. So I leave you with this. I leave you with this thought. Let me just jump in here. Okay.
Responsibility.
Disney are getting torn apart from the inside by their own staff. Again. At some point they'll learn to stop hiring these people. It all started when Jimmy Kimmel got fired by ABC. At the time, people thought it was for his comments the previous night on his opening monologue.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
We've since found out it was a combination of advertisers and affiliates behind the scenes who couldn't stand his comments, combined with planning to double down on his next show, despite Disney asking Kimmel to apologize and address the situation in a way that would take down the temperature, Kimmel decided to defend it as being grossly mischaracterized by a certain group of people. This is a brave move for someone whose ratings were plummeting even before he got suspended for his comments. He's already down 43% from where he was at the start of this year and averaged only 129,000 viewers in the advertiser demographic 18 to 49, otherwise known as the one they actually pay you for. Not only was this the perfect excuse to get rid of someone who was losing you money, but this is someone who's losing you money who's bringing you massive issues. When a guy gets shot in the neck and your reaction is to blame the victims of the problem rather than taking ownership and wondering, oh yeah, that stuff I said, that was out of place, wasn't it? I should probably apologize for that. It's no wonder that advertisers are going to have a problem with what you're saying. Kimmel was acting like he was irreplaceable, only to find out he was already living on borrowed time. Now,
So that's kind of the genesis of this, right? Was it something that had purely to do with ABC feeling pressure from Trump's administration, regardless of financial considerations? If Jimmy Kimmel had a top performing show, he wouldn't have been canceled. It all comes down in corporations to shareholder value. It always has, it always will. Even though I produced over 650 videos on this YouTube channel to beg business visionaries to think of a new model based on stakeholder value and profit with a purpose. But the point being, he's in negotiations to be reinstated at ABC because of the financial implications, the loss of subscribers, the loss in ad revenue that I mentioned previously. And then
all y'all yesterday who were saying that Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled was the death of free speech in the United States, I want you to sit back and watch what's happening now. Because see, here's the thing. Anytime a would-be autocrat, anytime a petty tyrant like Donald Trump tries to crack down, take away your rights, trample all over our freedoms, yeah, it sucks. It's meant to scare you. It's an intimidation tactic. They do it to see how you respond. They do it to see whether or not you push back. And if you don't push back, then they're like, okay, cool, we can advance a little bit further here. Every time they try shit like this, it creates space for something called the backlash effect. It creates space for people to be like, oh, hell no, absolutely not. We are not standing for this. And that is what we've seen in the last 24 hours on so many different levels. Walt Disney, they are freaking the fuck out. They did not anticipate the scale of the public outcry.
And that's truth to power. And listen, whether you're watching this for that takeaway, you can see a consistent thread or a narrative of Trump's administration going after corporations with a very real, their blueprint 2050 strategy of taking control, controlling the media, controlling corporations, keeping you silent. I've done God knows how many videos on this. I talked about Target CEO being pushed out because of him doing away with the E&I initiatives that upset his employees and his consumer base. I've talked about other companies that are have done away with DE&I programs at venerable American corporations like Harley Davidson, Boeing, McDonald's, Meta. The list goes on and on and on. So in that regard, Disney is fundamentally consistent with other corporations kowtowing to pressure from this administration. But Disney's issues go deeper. And that's what I want the lesson to be as a takeaway from today's video. For those of you who are business founders, leaders, people in HR, that there are repercussions when you move away from your ethical construct, your values. And that's a powerful statement. And so lastly is Disney has, as I've said, a storied history of ethical challenges. So Jimmy Kimmel and ABC is just the latest, and we've kind of covered on that. ABC Network abruptly pulls the long-running late-night show, Jimmy Kimmel Live. Now, you could argue it was not based on pressure from this administration, but because of poor financial performance, and it was an ideal opportunity from the board to pull the show. But it reflects a deeper trend or transformation of Disney moving farther away from its core roots and its values from its founder, Walt Disney. So again, Trump's administration is populated with Trump's people. And the administration, the government agency that oversees TV, television, broadcast is the FCC. FCC chairman Brendan Carr threatened to remove ABC's affiliate broadcast licenses if they didn't take some kind of action. But there are other issues at play. So Disney Marvel Studios superhero star Tatiana Maslany suggested that you should vote with your feet and cancel your. I mentioned that. But it's just Scarlett Johansson is another example. Disney's first major movie after the pandemic was superhero spy story Black Widow, which went back to 2020. With many theaters still closed during the pandemic, Disney took a controversial decision of releasing it simultaneously on Disney Plus, where subscribers could access it for the monthly fee of $29.99. National Association of Theater Owners blasted the decision and said that that's going to lead to a drastic reduction in box office revenue, which makes sense. People didn't feel comfortable going out. They'd rather watch it, stream it from their comfort and safety of their home. And it saw a 67% fall in box office receipts in the movie's second weekend. That made it Marvel's worst performer during that time period. So that was another example. Gina Carano. Despite being in the midst of a global pandemic, Disney was on the offensive in 2020.